Hey, welcome to another podcast. I'm Jillian Young with Premier Plus Realty, and I'm joined by Edgardo Balentine of Neo Home Loans. And we are going to talk about the market. You're going to learn what the big mortgage rate predictions are for 2025. We'll talk a little bit about the economic conditions that, as a real estate professional and even as a buyer or seller, you can be watching that help predict a little bit of what's going to happen with those big purchase decisions. So we're excited to have you, Ed. How are you doing?
Good. A little bit under the weather, so my voice is deeper than it typically is, but all good.
Yeah, and it's 50 degrees outside,
Yes,
which for Floridians feels like negative 13. We're total
seriously.
wusses. I mean, literally, I literally have like this is the thickest coat I have, and I'm freezing my tail off. Um, but it's good to be with you, and I think we have a lot to talk about. So it's timely. A lot of the Southwest Florida area transactional data just came out for 2024, which helps us figure out what the patterns were last year, which help us look at what could possibly happen in 2025. So Ed, let's just
Yeah.
get right to it. From
Well,
your perspective,
yeah,
2025, yeah.
I want to say, like, I think, look, I think these things are important because just like every market stat, every month we get our market stats. At the end of the year, we get the stats for the year. Like, I think fundamentally what we need to start thinking about as real estate professionals is, okay, yes, you need to have the knowledge of the stats themselves and what the expectation is for the next year. But you also need to start thinking, okay, how am I going to present this to the clients? How am I going to take this information and make it so that, I can speak to a client and tell them that it's a good time to buy, sell, or refinance in our case with this, like armed with all of this information. And I think that's a piece of the puzzle that a lot of times when we geek out on these things, or we pretend to be economists, or we pretend to get like super nerdy on this, we forget about that part of like, okay, let's make sure that we take this information and then that we're able to help our clients translate this information into action. So
Right.
I just want to throw that out there. But yeah, for this year, what do you want me to start with where we think rates are going to be?
Yeah, let's start with the basics. Where do you think rates are going to fall? Who knows, right? 6 to 12 months from now, but what's the collective industry thought about that?
Right. So when it comes to the rates, the expectation by the end of the year is to have rates in the high fives to the low sixes. Okay, so we're talking about 5.75 all the way to a six and a quarter. Right now, we're really, depending on the day, depending on the week, we're really around that 7% mark. Sometimes a little over, sometimes a little under, but that's where we've been living. Um, this is the thing with the rates. We've been talking about lower rates for the past 24 months. And I mean, at this point it's almost embarrassing to talk about it, because for the past 24 months, not only we've been talking about lower rates, but we've been talking about uh the rates lowering extremely fast and in a short period of time. So, when rates hit 7%, or when rates hit 8%, or when rates hit even 5, 6%, we were all talking that in the next 3 months, 4 months, we're going to look at rates in the 4.5%. And clearly that didn't happen. And what I want to make sure that everybody understands is, when we give rate predictions, it's not just me waking up one day thinking, okay, well, where do I think rates are going to be? We look at what the economists are saying, what the people in the mortgage industry are saying, what a lot of people that look at things like inflation and unemployment and kind of like where the Fed tends to move when these things happen are saying. And then we collect all of that information, and that's how we get to these numbers. And by looking at things like inflation, like the jobs report, like what the Fed says they're doing, like what the Fed normally acts like, because they say they're doing one thing, but they change their tune every single week. So how we think the Fed is actually going to act, and all the economic uncertainty that we see, that's where we think we're going to land. We're going to land in that high five to low sixes.
Do you think that sort of prediction is what what is propelling some of the closed sale predictions of being between 4 and 7% higher than 2024?
So this is what I think the reality is. I think that people are there's the reason why we were so, I don't want to say we were so bad last year, but the reason why last year wasn't as exciting, right? Like we put some numbers, and there was 31% fewer homes sold in the US last year, 2024, than pre-pandemic years. Forget about the
Yeah,
pandemic where
right,
everything was
right,
crazy, but pre-pandemic, it's crazy.
right.
But a lot of things hit us, right? Like in our area, we had the two hurricanes. There's also the excuse of the election. A lot of people were like, "Well, we don't really understand where this country economically is gonna go when it comes to taxes and capital gains and all these things." So that creates inaction. And obviously the rates. What I think is going to happen this year is now at least there's that uncertainty of who is going to win the election. That's gone. And look, I'm I've been talking about this a lot lately, and every time that the Fed hikes the rates or lower the rates, you hear me be the first one yelling at people that these are not the mortgage rates. But the truth is, we are going to have at least two times that the Fed is going to lower the rates. That's what they expect now. Before it was four, but now they say they're only going to lower it two times. And every time that hits the news, it makes people feel like the rates are lower, the mortgage rates are
Hmm.
lower, whether it's true or not. So I feel like while last year we were fighting against a lot of bad economic titles, like news titles, this
Hmm.
year we're going to have a lot of good ones. Like we know who the president is, like the Fed's going to lower rates, like inflation should start coming down where the Fed wants it to be. So
Hmm.
I think all of those things are going to make it so people actually move. The other thing too is people are used to higher rates now. Like people don't believe us anymore when we say that rates are going to drop in 3 months. So they're like, okay, whatever, let's just buy the house.
Right. And so, obviously we know this, that 6-7% rate is historically low. It doesn't really matter when you're looking at what your monthly payment is. So there's still some hesitation there. But what you're saying is that the consumer confidence will be higher this year because a lot of the unknowns are sort of wiped clean. And what I am seeing at our firm here at Premier Plus Realty is we had a giant spike in inventory. So we put 115 new listings on the market in the second week of January, which is about a little over 20% more than we did last year at the same week. So, and what we're continuing to see sellers going, okay, you know what, I'm going to put my home on the market and see what happens over season because I'm feeling a little more confident to purchase something because obviously all sellers become buyers. So a lot of times the inventory is reflective of a seller's buyer confidence. Does that make sense? So we have a 30% increase in inventory. We have a lot of homes to choose from. What are you seeing, Edgardo, in terms of buyer demand on the financing side?
So this is interesting, right? Because the things that I was saying, look, and this is where looking at the overall country, the numbers for the nation versus the numbers for Southwest Florida, that's where we see the biggest difference, right? When
Hmm.
in most areas in the country, there's a lot of struggle with inventory still. They
Hmm.
still lower in when it comes to inventory. Southwest Florida has one of the highest inventories in the country,
Hmm.
especially when it comes to condos. So you know that the inventory here it's higher. What I've always said is that that allows the buyers to basically be able to negotiate an offer that's or a contract that's better for them, that's
Hmm.
friendlier for the buyer. Things like the buy down strategies are something that we're seeing in every single contract that we have right now.
Hmm.
Things like seller concessions are something that we're seeing in a lot of contracts that maybe everywhere else in the country they can't have. And again, I think that because that expectation that rates were going to drop overnight, it's gone. I'm seeing a lot of buyers with the new year, with the excuse of the new administration going, okay, this is the new reality. What can I qualify for? What can we do? There's these houses that I want to work with. They're offering seller concessions. How can we take advantage of that? Like the demand, to your point, the demand this year we've had an extremely busy January. That's not the norm for a January. January typically it's a slower month, and this month has been very busy so far. And I think it's because of that. I think the rates have been normalized, and I think that people are going, okay, this is what we have. Sellers are willing to play ball. Let's do something with this.
Edgardo, what is the average equity that someone who purchased, years ago has in their home right now?
I think it's 45%.
Okay.
Typically, I think right now over in the whole country is 45%. You have to
Okay.
check me on that.
Yeah. Okay. So it's great. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
people have a lot of equity.
appreciating asset, right? So I think that sellers in this area, particularly the ones that purchased at the height of our unicorn years, the 21, 22 years, um, do they still have a bit of equity because prices really haven't dropped dramatically from where they were set before.
Well, we haven't really seen a big price drop. Like,
Right.
I understand that if you go into specific markets, and like, for example, like the condo market right now, it's a tough market,
Hmm.
right? The condo market in Southwest Florida is tough, but not because of economic pressures, but because of all the other pressures with hurricane insurance and all these other things. It's hard to
Right.
finance, whatever. But we really haven't seen it. Like, I think we saw last year an increase in pricing in at least in equity of 1.9% to 4%, depending on the area. So, yes, we're seeing listings getting decreased, but those
Mhm.
aren't closed sales.
Right.
So when we actually see, where prices were 2 years ago or last year versus where prices are now, there's an increase. Now, it's not an increase of 10%, 19%, or 20% like we've had before, but even at 3% and 2%, if you accumulate that, you get a lot of equity. And especially when there's a mortgage there. Like if somebody buys a house for $300,000 and that house goes up by 3%, yes, it's only a $9,000 increase in the equity of the home. But somebody buying a house for $300,000 maybe only put 3% down or 3.5% down. So their money basically, gave the ROI of 100% when you actually look at it from an investment standpoint. And obviously in Southwest Florida, there's not a lot of houses for $300,000. So yeah, a
Right.
lot of people have equity, and a lot of people now are looking into ways of getting home equity lines of credit or things like that to take advantage of that equity.
Right. So I think the point I'm trying to make is that we have a lot of inventory right now, and we do have buyer demand, which is what is causing the price to not necessarily lower like you would see in a more normalized market because Southwest Florida is such a desirable place to live. So what we're seeing just at the brokerage are a lot of standoffs between the sellers and the buyers. The sellers going, no, 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 I think I can get this amount for my home. And the buyer going, yeah, but have you seen how much inventory there is and how much competition there is? And with property taxes, insurance, and a host of other assessments and issues that buyers are faced with currently, sellers I think are needing to be a little more flexible with the price going in. So what we're telling our realtors is, hey, let's have those price decrease conversations after 2 weeks and then 4 weeks and 6 weeks, and let's prepare your sellers who still have that aspirational pricing in their mind and say, we're not talking the home prices are not going to drop in this area. I'm talking very small percentage, but buyers want to feel like they have the upper hand. The buyers want to feel like they're getting some sort of concession or some sort of deal because home prices are higher in this area than they are in other parts of Florida, but they want to live here because it's beautiful and wonderful and all of that. So they want to live here. Homes are feel a little unattainable because of so many economic factors. What are some things that we can be telling sellers right now to make it a little more accessible to buyers?
Yeah, I was gonna say that's where I think, having a good real estate advisor, having a
Mm-hmm.
good consultation with your buyer and honestly with your seller comes into play, because that's where you can become tactical with this. So, for example, I don't think I don't think it has never been as important as it is right now for a seller to really understand how capital gain taxes and what the taxes are going to be on a sell, right? Because look, a lot of times, like you say, sellers can only work with the information they have. In their mind, if I sell the house for more, I'm going to make more on the house, period. And if I sell it for $10,000 more, I'm going to make $10,000 more when everything is said and done.
Mhm.
And that's not necessarily the case, right? So having a conversation about, look, maybe somebody can only get up to $250,000 in capital gains without paying, or $250,000 in capital gains without having to pay capital gain taxes. And
Mhm.
then every dollar that they spend after that, it's going to be taxed. So it's going to be, they're not going to make as much money as they think with any dollars after that. That's a good conversation to have with the seller. Another thing to have with the seller is, hey, the problem that we have right now, it's an affordability problem for most buyers. It's hard to afford a house for all the things that you said, Jillian. Insurance is high, taxes are high, the rates are high. All of these things are it's difficult for a buyer to get into a house. So how can we make this house more affordable? One of the options is, yes, to lower the price. Another option is to offer concessions to lower the interest rate, for example. So, I mean, these are the things that we can start, having a conversation with our seller to make the house more affordable. Because the main issue that we have right now, we're not seeing houses not appraising. All the houses that are appraising, some
Mhm.
are appraising even for more. The main issue we have right now is affordability. That debt to income ratio for the buyers, man, they're strapped, right? Because they need to not only be able to cover the mortgage, but they also need to cover insurance and taxes. And everything has gone up.
Mhm.
Car payments have gone up. All of their other expenses have gone up. So it's hard for them to afford homes. And by giving things like the seller concessions and lower a rate to a 5% or a 4%, that's where I think the magic comes. And that's why I think this particular market, it's still an extremely interesting market, because we have a market where we have a lot of inventory, which allows sellers to, or allow buyers to negotiate and help with the affordability. But in addition to having a lot of inventory, we also have a lot of people moving into this place,
Mhm.
into Southwest Florida. So when you look at the chart, yes, we have inventory right now, which, by the way, a lot of inventory, we have like 7 months of inventory, which is a balanced market.
Right.
But we have more inventory than a lot of other places in the country. But the expectation is there's going to be a lot more demand than there's going to be inventory in the future, which means we expect the houses to continue to go up. So it's a really, really good market for a buyer to take advantage of now, get into the house and then, ride that appreciation wave.
So I think the headline for the 2025 housing market is this is what it is,
It
and
is what it is.
it is what it is. That stability, I don't think we're going to see a lot of volatility in terms of prices and sales skyrocketing and or dipping way down. I think we're going to have a nice incremental growth in the housing market for 2025, particularly for Southwest Florida, because as you said, buyer demand is super high. Take a look at the driver's license reports. I mean, my goodness, we are issuing driver's licenses from out of state people left and right. So they're coming here. They want to see homes. They love it. The weather is terrible up north right now. So the demand is there. We have a balanced market. I think it's going to be a nice and a steady time for both buyers and sellers, to be honest. And that's not a platitude. I think that's in a balanced market, there's advantages to both sides.
Yeah, and look, nothing is linear with this, right? Except for inflation. Inflation, things keep going up, but nothing is linear in the sense of, there's ups and there's downs and whatever. But overall, we do see this year inventory coming down a little bit,
Mhm.
more buyers getting into this market, and more buyers being able to afford in this market just because they finally accepted that it is what it is, like you're saying. And I want to say, like, we're expecting to have the Fed is expecting to have two cuts. And we actually expect the Fed to cut at least three times. But the Fed right now, they're saying that they're going to cut two times. This is where becoming tactical is important. Like, every time that the Fed cut rates, we see an uptick in applications, an uptick in people wanting to buy houses. So be prepared for that. We know when they're going to meet. We know when they're going to cut. They tell you for the whole week before they cut when they're going to cut. Be prepared for those things. Start talking to your buyers right now. Start talking to your sellers and tell them that this is going to happen. Another thing that's important, I think, for every realtor to know is, look, bad news in the economy is good for rates, and unfortunately is good for housing too, because houses tend to go up in recessions. So, we predict that we're going to see unemployment go up. If you talk to a buyer and the buyer goes, or a seller and the buyer goes and the seller goes, look, unemployment is going up, I think this is bad for the economy. Sure, that's bad for the economy, but not bad for housing, not bad for mortgages, not bad for the people that are actually buying homes. So I would invite everybody to look at the class that we did. We're gonna share it with you. Look at the prediction and what we're talking about, because a lot of it is very counterintuitive. A lot of bad news for the economy are good news for housing and good news for rates. And it's important that we, as real estate professionals, we can talk to our buyers and sellers and tell them, hey, all of those things, while they feel like they're bad overall, they're really good if you're buying or selling a house. So let's get ready. And that's the conversation that we need to have. This is a steady market. This is a market that's been going up for the past, I don't know, 30 years. It's going to continue to go up. Inventory right now, thank God we have some inventory, because when we don't have inventory, it's going to be crazy. Buyers are getting in to it more. Sellers have the ability to, give some seller concessions and still make a ton of money because they have a ton of equity. Like, this is a good market to take advantage of. So that's the tune that we need to give our clients. What I want to stop telling our clients, which is what we've been saying for the past 2 years, is rates are going to drop in the next 3 months. Because every time we say that, even though we talk for the next hour, all they hear is, I'll just wait 3 months. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I've been doing it a disservice to all my clients that have been waiting, because they're worse off today than they were 3 months ago and a year ago. Because guess what? Houses are more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing is going to happen this year. If they wait another 3 months, another 6 months, houses are going to be more expensive, because this market in Southwest Florida is resilient.
Right. So for a buyer looking in Southwest Florida right now, that does depend on financing. This is most likely the most normalized interest rate, and historically it's okay, and you can work with the seller on rate buy downs and concessions and a host of other things. So don't let just what the headline news stop you from putting in an application, really having a consultation with Ed or Scott to figure out exactly what you can afford and jump into the Southwest Florida market. Our firm has had like I said, a number of listings, but also a number of pending contracts, a surprising number for January, to be honest. All that says to me is buyers are figuring out a way to make negotiations happen. And to be honest, what the offers are coming in just below what asking price is, and they're going back and forth. This is really a time to hone in those negotiation skills and know what all the options are, in order to make them make the transaction seamless, so that both sides can feel like they've had a win-win. So truly a stable market. I think we have a balanced.
This is a
Yeah.
boring market. And boring is
Boring,
good.
right?
Boring
Yeah.
because the market is going up. We expect the market to go up 3% this year. That's boring. But hey, it's up. It's not down. There's six
Right.
months, 7 months of inventory, which is the balanced market. That's boring. And rates are slightly below the average. The average historically has been 8%. Now we're at around 6.8, almost 7%. So this is boring, but boring is good.
Yeah, and we like to say, during the unicorn years in 20 to 22, we were borrowing from the future, and so we paid for that last year. And here we're normalizing, getting steady, balanced market. It's going to take those negotiation skills. We don't need to freak out, whether you're a seller or a buyer. Uh, Good consumer feelings are all over the place, and so buyer demand remains while we have good inventory. So overall, I'm super positive about what's coming ahead. And I wanted to invite all of you to the Naples Area Board of Realtors. We have a year-end market conference on February 28th. That's a Friday, from, I think it's like 1 to 2:30, but it'll be on the NABOR calendar. Yeah, February 28th from 1 to 2:30. I have the honor of speaking about closed sales from 2024, along with some of my other colleagues in the area. And then we'll have a question and answer time so that you can ask your questions about what we think is going to happen in 2025 and the specific economic factors that are going to influence those decisions. Because I love, oh my gosh, I can't think of the name right now. Keeping Current Matters. They always say that a great professional is able to explain what is happening in the market and to teach your customers and your clients. So it's important that you take time to really study the market and look at trends over time. You don't want to be the person that's just, yeah, it's a great time to buy, it's a great time to sell, just because you're a real estate professional. You really need to hone in on the numbers and help guide them to the best decision for their family, for their finances, and for what their dreams are. So, so if you could summarize 2025 prediction, Edgardo, in like in just a quick short summary, what would you say to close us out?
Well, I would say that we're going to have rates in the high sixes, or I'm sorry, high fives to low sixes. I think that appreciation in this area it's going to be close to 3%. And I think that it's more important now than ever to be an advisor when you're a realtor, because the market is not an obvious market. There's 100 of different options to help your buyers and your sellers, and being an advisor is more important now than ever. I really do think that this is going to be a breakout year for a lot of good agents, because I think that the market is just perfect to not ride the wave of, I've been doing real estate for 50 years and therefore you should use me, and instead saying things like, look, let's do a whole analysis of your situation and let me help you maximize your sell or maximize your purchase. And there's a ton of ways to do that. So I think this is a super exciting year. And from a buyer standpoint, I think this is going to be one of the last years that you can buy in this market without the market just completely leaving you behind. So I
Mhm.
urge every single buyer, and I'm not saying this to be pushy, use whatever lender you want, although you should use me, but use whatever lender you want. If you want to buy in Southwest Florida,
Mhm.
it's only going to get harder. Stop waiting, because if you don't jump in right now, you're going to lose out on appreciation, and it's going to be a market that's going to be impossible to buy into.
Man, there you go. That's it. So I just have to say that maybe for some of you watching, being an advisor sounds really intimidating because you've never done anything like that, or you feel
Not a
like you're,
classical real estate
yeah,
advisor.
you're weak in that area. So we do have a class for that. However, the easiest thing to do is you need to get in front of Edgardo so that he can show you the host of products and services and marketing help that he can give you for your business, so that you can help communicate with your buyers and sellers, but also get your buyer in front of Edgardo so that he can do an analysis, because they truly care about the whole person and not just the purchase. So they take a look at all of your financial data and help you make the best decision. So you can rely on that team and your partner and Edgardo and Scott, and they'll take the time. Trust me. I purchased my home through Edgardo, and that really solidified the relationship with Premier and Neo, because they sat down with my husband and I and really helped us feel good about purchasing our home in a time when we were told, oh, the rates are super high. This is really scary. Watch out. And he's like, relax. It's okay. And here's all the reasons why, and you're going to be fine. And guess what? We are. So I just
And rates are
encourage you.
higher now.
And rates are higher now. Exactly. So, so all right. Well, thank you, Edgardo, for your time. Thanks everyone for watching. I hope you learned something, and we'll see you at the next one.